my book. I just realized I don't have my copy to read from. It's in my purse back there somewhere.
Just right through your purse.
Yeah, just right through my purse. So welcome, everybody. Thank you for coming. We have some old friends here, some new friends, I'm sure. My life, which is the subject of my book, started off with a bang. I was born with spondyloepiphyseal dysplasia, which is just a really long Latin word for really short. It's one of over 200 types of dwarfism. And it linked me from my first breath to the medical world, which turned out to be an incredibly pivotal relationship and learning and a metaphor for how our life leads us from our enemies into becoming our allies. My parents brought me and one brother. There are 6 of us. The last 2 of us were both born with the same condition. They had told my mom after my brother was born that he was a mutation. What a lovely word to put on a person. And they said it wouldn't happen again. So my parents, who wanted a huge family, as if 4 and 5 and 6 wasn't enough, they went ahead and I came along, disproved the doctors, who at the time didn't know that dwarfism is genetically passed on. They thought it was simply environmental mutation, accident, misfortune, a couple other negative words that they seemed to label anything different. So my parents brought us to the Center for Birth Defects once a year, twice a year, to head off any physical problems. My form of dwarfism is associated with arthritis. Other forms have much more serious medical conditions. Some have none. Some were just short. But my parents wanted to be sure that nothing surprising came up. So we went to visit the doctors. It was terrifying for me to have them look such focus and such objectivity, adjust my body. They had no consideration of the person. And they were taught to be that way, to be detached, and to not consider that the whole mind-body system is at work as well. Because with their labels, I started to become my own worst enemy. So this particular year, when I was 9, we set off for Boston, and just the name of the city became terrifying to me. When I'd hear that name, I'd think, oh my God, because I hated it that much. It was so disempowering to me to be taken in front of these men with their and their big words, and I just went absolutely silent. I wouldn't speak to my parents, I wouldn't speak to my brother, but we continued to go. And this was one year when it was called a convention, not just the Birth Defect Center. And I remember my parents sitting us down, and there was something about their delivery that made me go, oh no. And I hid that year, which is something, I was not a defiant child at all, but I hid for, I would say, maybe an hour with them looking for me, wondering where I'd gone. And of course I finally gave in, realized, what power does a 9-year-old have? So off we went. We're going right in here, the doctor said, as his smile went first through the double doors. The sight ahead made me gasp. I was abandoned as he joined the sea of whitecoats with silver nooses around their necks. Charts and strange pictures hung silent on the walls. Chairs and tables waited in long rows. Bright lights and metal instruments pinched my eyes. So much noise until they saw me. A hush fell across the room. 4 smiles replaced the clatter. They wanted something. I stood alone in the front of the room as one of them approached. Hello, Julie. I'm Dr. Simon. I recognized his Vulcan eyebrows from the year before, but I said nothing. I didn't want them to know how terrified I was. Dr. Simon turned away from me and began to address the group. 1 in 100,000 births are yearly affected by spondyloepiphyseal dysplasia, a congenital defect. Here we see the proportionate short-statured SED with short trunk and proportionate limbs. This is unlike achondroplasia, which is a disproportionate short-statured SED with short trunk and proportionate limbs. Dr. Simon asked me to turn sideways and raise my arms. Note the curvature of the spine and pelvic abnormalities. He paused for a second and then looked me in the eyes. Would you mind standing up on the table? We just want everyone to be able to see your pretty face. On the inside, I was screaming, no. But a yes flew off my tongue. Even though I hated them, I wanted to be good. I was taught to be good, even for the white coats. Someone grabbed me under my armpits and lifted me into the air, up on display. Dr. Simon continued, his strange words pressing into my ears as another doctor moved my limbs, turning and twisting them, bending and straightening. His hollow voice magnified my flaws. Clipboards bobbed. Face after face examined me, nodding as they scribbled their notes. They looked so intently, but no one saw. The exhibition continued as I drifted away, desperate to drown out the labels that were anchoring inside. Defect, abnormal, deformed, dysplasia, arthritis, dwarfism. Would you mind bending forward for me, Julie? I obeyed as he continued. Note the decreased range of motion of the lumbar spine, narrowed disc spaces, limited flexibility in neck, decreased range of hip rotation, and degenerative changes in hips and misaligned knees. There are irregular epiphyses and abnormal growth of the long bones. Out of 5 older siblings, 1 brother carries the same diagnosis of spondyloepiphyseal dysplasia. The other 4 siblings are normal. Mother reports slight motor delays. Patient walked at 17 months of age. We just want to look at your pretty face. When they were done with me, I was brought back to my parents, a lost wallet, whose contents had been impersonally scanned. My ID, though, had been left behind. For years, I never even knew it was missing. But as life would have it, as I think is always the case, that we can come back around to something painful, to a loss, and make peace with it. And the doctors, because of this incredible fear of them and discomfort and the way I was treated, as soon as I could, I ran in the other direction, never to go near a white coat again. But I had arthritis, so I needed help. And I found alternative medicine. And I started looking into acupuncture and massage, and at the same time, my brother discovered macrobiotics, which is, it's a form of, it's eating, it's philosophy, but it showed me that there were other ways around this, that I didn't have to be imprisoned by white coats for the rest of my life. And it turned into such a blessing that I found this really early in my life, because I was able from my early 20s to start really researching and looking, and every new tool I found was so empowering to me, because I thought, well, I don't have to rely on doctors or the medical world. I did, as my life moved on, I did need them, and we did form a good partnership, and I became my own healer, I guess I should say. I wasn't a doctor, but I knew a lot more about me than they seemed to know or give me credit for. So each time something difficult came my way, I started to look, well, is there something else? Is there some way I can look at this differently? Because they were really the reason that I found what would, in fact, open my life up dramatically. When I went to Boston to study macrobiotics, I found this wonderful little bookstore that was full of personal growth books. And that just opened my eyes to the possibility that the power had been inside me all along. It had not been about my circumstances. It had been about how I was perceiving, how other people saw me. And I came into a world that considered a birth defect a disadvantage, a misfortune. And instead, I thought, well, what if this is, as the Chinese have a character, I think it's Chinese, it might be Japanese, that means crisis, and it means opportunity. And those two always go hand in hand depending on how we decide to look at it. So as I took a new book every day, I think, and was reading and discovering, and all of them seemed to echo the same thing. The source is inside. There is an innate wisdom and joy that comes with us, and over time we start to cover it with the world's notion of who we are, or our parents' notion, or our friends, and start to block out this wonderful voice that we own, that is uniquely us, that speaks to us in the quiet, in the silence, not in the deep. I had so much chatter in my head going on of who am I? Am I what other people say? Or am I that joy that I was as a child before I knew I was different? I spoke at my old high school last week. I've got some high school back there. And I was really intimidated to go back to that, even that building, for fear that it would bring me back to that time where I felt so vulnerable and so lost and so separate from everyone else. But the reason I wanted to go was the same reason, was I wanted to tell them that everybody was feeling like that. Even those who were, they had the looks and the popularity and everyone wanted to be them, they were struggling just like I was. And I didn't know that until I left school and started to read these books that said, express who you really are, not the smile, not who other people want you to be. Who are you really? And one of my friends who had been extremely popular in school, the more we got to know each other and realized how similar we were and how her self-esteem had been as bad as mine, I couldn't believe it. I thought anybody with the outer circumstances that look right should be happy on the inside. Of course, we see so many examples where that's not true. So it was more reinforcement to realize I could go inside. I could find that place that remembered me. Not the labels from the doctors or the names from the bullies or the pain in my body.